Hiya! This is Pittencrieff House with Dunfermline Abbey in the background. This is the birthplace of Brigadier General John Forbes, and I'm going to tell you how his story links this house, two people, two cities, two centuries, and two countries. I hope you're intrigued. Incidentally, if you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right hand side of the screen at any time during this video. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. It's the 5th of September, so let's begin with a man who was born in this house on this day in Scottish history. Now, given that this is Pittencrieff House in Dunfermline and that John Forbes was born on the 5th of September 1707, then we've ticked at least one man, one town and one century. And as I tell you a story, I'm going to take you for a walk through the heritage quarter of Dunfermline to another house. Beware of the squirrels. What do you think? A man born in that house in 1707 must be pretty well connected. And he must be rich. Well, one of those things is certainly true. Also, 1707 is slap bang in the middle of Jacobitism and the union between Scotland and England. Which side is he on? There may be trouble ahead. If you're not sure about the whole Jacobite thing, then I've got lots of videos about it. There'll be a link at the end, so don't worry. Forbes' uncle was close to William of Orange. The family were also close to the Campbell Dukes of Argyll. They were Hanoverians, they were Unionists, they were part of the new establishment. So well connected, and definitely not Jacobites. But as the youngest son, John would inherit nothing. So rich, no. Better get a trade, eh? He went off to study medicine at Edinburgh University, and at 22 he was appointed as a surgeon of the Royal Scots Greys. That's the famous cavalry regiment in the painting of them charging headlong at Waterloo, and all the white horses, you know the thing. I tell you what, I'll leave a link at the end so that you can see the photograph that I'm talking about, okay? Anyway, 7 years into being a doctor, he decides that he wants to be an actual soldier and takes a commission as a coronet. Now, a coronet's like a second lieutenant, but remember back in those days you bought your commission in the British Army. Empty-pocketed Dr. Forbes had to borrow money to be a soldier. His career feels a bit ploddy. Solid progress, but with occasional high spots. And obviously, good connections. There wasn't as much warring as an ambitious soldier might like for a few years, and as we've seen, as a junior son, he's no money to buy his way up the ladder. When Culloden happens on his cousin's doorstep, he was stuck in a continent with a cavalry unit. But he did have those Campbell connections, and they got him promoted to the colonel of the 17th Foot and sent to the Americas. Nova Scotia, to be precise. See the First World War? It wasn't really the First World War. European powers had been warring on a global scale since the 18th century. Earlier, really. The 7 Years' War was part of that. Roughly speaking, Britain, Hanover, Prussia, Portugal, and a couple of wee principalities on one side, and France, the Habsburgs, Saxony, Russia, Spain, and Sweden on the other. Now, part of this conflict across 4 continents was Britain's territorial dispute with France in North America. Our American cousins would call this the French Indian War. Our man, John Forbes, was sent to make an attempt on the French/Canadian, you get what I mean, town of Louisbourg even. It didn't go well. In fact, it went so badly that he got another promotion to Brigadier General, and a huge challenge that affects us down to today. Could he pull it off? Well, his predecessor had failed. In the summer of 1755, General Edward Braddock, given the job of going west from Pennsylvania through the wilderness to attack the French Fort Duquesne, managed a pace of around 2 miles a day. The thing is that he had to build a road to take the carts and cannon as they went. Now, they outnumbered the French and Indian forces at the fort 2-1. But when they came across this force, not far from the fort, Braddock insisted on fighting like gentlemen, the European way, standing in ranks in the open. The French and the Indians said, "Sod this for a game of soldiers, we're hiding behind the trees." Anyway, it was a disaster. Braddock got killed, and what remained of the force was led to Pennsylvania by a militiaman called George Washington. 2 years later, the newly promoted Brigadier General John Forbes was given the job of getting it right this time. And he already had a half-built road. He said, "No, I'm going to build a new road. It'll be more southerly, it'll be more sneaky, with less river crossings and more forts along the way. In future, they'll call it Forbes Road, and people will head out west on this road to build a new life for themselves." Obviously, he wasn't going to build it himself. The soldiers would do it. And as they did it, they had to carry him on a litter because he wasn't feeling too good by this stage. Disaster! Some of his advanced troops got too far ahead of the rest and lost a battle and 300 men. Was this going to be a repeat of the failure a couple of years before? He took a pause. Now, fortunately, whilst the pompous Englishman Braddock had alienated the Indians, Forbes befriended them. Because that's what we Scottish folk are like. So by the time that the road was approaching Fort Duquesne, the Indians had switched sides. The French were on their own. They left the fort, burned it to the ground, and Forbes entered in triumph. Strike up the pipes! Now we've now reached Dunfermline Abbey. Now, you might not have heard of John Forbes, but buried in here are Robert the Bruce and his wife, Malcolm and St. Margaret Canmore, Duncan II, Edgar, Alexander I, David I, and Malcolm IV. 7 Scottish kings in all are buried in here. Can I ask you a favour? See, at the end of the video, can you tell me in the comment section below, of all the people that I mentioned in this video, who is the most famous? In the meantime, back to Brigadier General John Forbes. We're leaving the Abbey and Cathedral in the background, which is what Forbes did with the fort. He built a new fort to replace the French one that burned down, and he named it after the British politician and statesman William Pitt. Shortly after his triumph, the illness that had kept Forbes in his litter killed him. But that's not the end of the story. You see, meanwhile, as the 18th century progressed, a town built up around Fort Pitt, which of course was called Pittsburgh. That's right. Of course, the German immigrants to Americans called it Pittsburgh, but we know that that's wrong. Edinburgh, Jedburgh, Musselburgh, a town named by a Scotsman after an Englishman called Pitt, would correctly be pronounced Pittsburgh. Anyway, the confluence of rivers and access to resources meant that during the 19th century, Pittsburgh became a steel town. That's why its football team's called the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers, really, isn't it? Their first home was a stadium called Forbes Field, after the man born in Pittencrieff House, where we started. I should say that John Forbes' elder brother, who inherited that house, also got into debt problems, and the house had to be sold on his death. Anyway, who was the most successful man in the Pittsburgh steel industry? A man who grew up here. Not in this little cottage, but in the half of this little cottage that his family rented. Unlike John Forbes, he started humble, but went on to be one of the richest men ever. His name, of course, was Andrew Carnegie. Modern day Pittsburgh has Forbes Field, but it also is home to the Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh, the Carnegie Science Centre, Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, and the Carnegie Music Hall. Here in Dunfermline, we have the Carnegie Halls, the Carnegie Library and Galleries, and of course, this house, the Carnegie Birthplace Museum. Oh, did I forget to mention, Andrew Carnegie bought Pittencrieff House and grounds and generously donated them to the city of Dunfermline, which is why it's the public park and museum that we walk through today. Incidentally, if you want more of these videos, you can generously donate to help keep them going. There's even a way that you can support the channel without making a donation. Click the link in the description below for details. So 2 houses, 2 men, 2 towns, 2 centuries, and 1 video worth sharing, all rolled into a 10-minute walk. I believe I fulfilled my promise to you. Ha mi yn dochus gw'n bi la malai. Cheery and Rasta.
Okay.